It's Valentine's Day, and we're talking romance tropes. So, whether you are a romance writer looking for a little bit of inspiration or a non romance writer just looking to add a little love to your story, stay tuned for this episode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey to publication. I'm Christina Catane. I write Christian fiction, and happy Valentine's Day.
And I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
Okay, so today is Valentine's Day. We're talking about romance. But before we do that, I just want to thank all our people that show up in the chat. You guys always make it so rich and interesting and ask great questions and give great feedback. And we just love you. And we also love everybody who listens anywhere you listen to podcasts, or if you watch us later. We love you all. Like, give us all the hearts and the thumbs ups and tell all your friends. I know some people like to say, if you don't like us, tell everybody. If you do like us, tell everybody. Just tell everybody.
Agreed.
I don't know. Yeah. So we all start with our segment called What's Up? And so, Jennifer, what is up with you?
Real quick, let's check in with everyone in the. I'd already clicked it. Sorry, Tina.
Oh,
Good
I
morning.
didn't see that.
Sadie and Christy are here. Happy Valentine's Day. Purpose Behind the Pen is with us as well. Piper Dow says Happy Valentine's Day. Catherine Carroll says good morning. Happy Singleness Awareness Day. That is the best. SL Parents says good morning. Happy Hearts Day or Happy Snowstorm Day. We had our snowstorm yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, Wednesday and Thursday, really. So, but I guess another one's coming in here. Have you heard that?
Yeah, my husband said something about it was like twisting around and going this way and coming back. It's the same storm.
I don't watch the news anymore. I used to watch the news every single morning to the point that my kids, my littles were starting to pay attention, and I had to honestly stop because they were too little to see some of the sad stuff. I get my weather reports from my dad. My dad called me this morning to let me know what the weather was going to be. And I don't even double check it anymore. So he says there's a snowstorm coming. There's a snowstorm coming. So
yeah, I get it from my husband. He's a little obsessed. But he has a reason to be, because he has to drive
right
for his job, and he needs to know. So I don't go anywhere. I sit here in my house on my computer.
I know people are like, oh, I hate winter. I'm like, no, I don't hate winter. And then I realized it's because I don't have to get out in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, but not like other people do. So, all right. So my what's up is, if you can probably tell by listening to me, is I've been dealing with a head cold. And I felt it coming on Tuesday. Actually, I didn't feel good at all Tuesday, but we had our Patreon Q&A Tuesday night, and I didn't want to miss that. And so I took a bunch of medicine, and I felt pretty good throughout that. So I thought I was doing okay. And then I woke up Wednesday, just not good. And it's just not, I feel like I've been so sick. Me and my girls have been sick constantly. Someone is sick in our house for this whole winter. It's been crazy.
A lot of people have been sick this winter, and this flu that's going around right now. I know somebody there's 8 people that live in their house from the ages of 2 to 56, and they all got the flu, and it's been like 9 days. Her husband's so sick, he fell, and he thinks he broke his arm, but he's too sick to go get it checked. Like, he feels so bad. He doesn't even want to go see if he broke his arm. I'm just like, that is sick. You have to be pretty sick. I know.
I was supposed to go down to my church today and get some things done. And I'm like, oh, can I fit it in tomorrow? But part of me thinks that maybe if I can force us to get out of the house, the fresh air sometimes helps getting out in the cold weather. I don't know. So we'll see what happens. But
I was never sick my entire childhood in elementary school. And I lived in Alaska. And we went outside and played outside every single day, in the snow, in the dark. We just did. And I think that was part of it.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm glad I did not miss our Q&A on Tuesday, which is funny that we still call it a Q&A. The whole point of the Q&A is supposed to be come in, our Patreons, ask us anything. It doesn't matter what it's about. It could be about a personalized, it could be about like, we don't care. We're pretty much open books here. But I was having technical difficulties. My computer wouldn't turn on, which I know I need a new computer, but anyway, I get in there and Piper Dow asked me straight up, "Hey, how's writing going?" And it turned into this therapy session. And like I just kind of like unloaded everything that's been going on with me the past few months with my family and everything. And they were just so supportive about it. But I was afterwards, I just appreciate our patrons. They were so great. It was such a great conversation with all of us. But then afterwards, I was feeling so guilty. I felt like I railroaded the conversation. I felt like I showed up and all of a sudden it was all about me. And then I get the sweetest message from Piper yesterday. She privately messaged me just to let me know what was going on in her life and to share with me that she's praying for me and that she was so glad that I shared. And I really needed that because I think Satan does that to us when we have community, right? And this is a community of Christians. I know we're all writers, but we're Christian writers first, right? We're Christians and that we have this community. And I think that like when you start to build that community, Satan doesn't want that because he knows that like there's power in prayer and that we were praying for each other. And I started to feel so guilty. And the fact that she messaged me at that time was the perfect time. And I just want to shout out to Piper that she's a great friend and she's a great supporter. And I just really appreciate her heart. So
It's awesome. And
yeah.
it's the enemy that makes us feel guilty.
Yes.
If the Lord might convict you of something, but it's gentle. It's not this, oh my gosh, I'm terrible person kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if he
Yes,
can,
that's so true.
I know this lady that is always saying, if the Lord can't make you bad, he'll make you busy or he'll make you isolated.
The Lord doesn't do that to
No,
us.
I'm sorry, the enemy.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yes,
If the
yes.
enemy can't make you bad, he'll make you busy or he'll make you isolated.
Oh, so true. Gosh, that's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So be praying for me, be praying for each other. Like this is a great community. Like if you're not part of our Patreon, it's for like the cost of a cup of coffee, really. You could be part of our Q&A group too.
It's a
But
shenanigan
But for
call.
free, you can be in our the shenanigans level. For free, you can be in our Facebook group. So if you're not in part either of those, you need to because there's some great people. We have been blessed. I've been a part of a lot of writing groups on and Facebook that I end up leaving because they eventually turn toxic. And I feel like ours, we're just so blessed. God has been so good to us. It's still small, so that's part of it, I think, but it's a
Yeah.
blessing. Okay, purpose behind the pen shares that her what's up is she never got the chance to finish book 18 last weekend. For her husband and I decided to cook dinner together. Aw, and I did watch the last second half of the game since hubby wanted to. Those things are important. The book will always be there. I mean,
Yeah.
look at me. My book's still there. But like you got to focus on your family. Your family is what is, God has given you to take care of right this minute, right?
Right.
Piper says, so glad we don't have a snow day here today. School vacation next week, and I need a few days before that to gird the loins. LOL. That's awesome. We do have, we've had two. So we go to a co-op on Thursdays, a homeschool co-op. And the last 2 Thursdays have been snow days. And then I looked at the calendar and realized that next week is our midwinter break. And my kids are like, are we ever going to get to go back to co-op? I'm like, I don't know. Piper says, wait, hold on a second. Piper says her mom fell and told her the next day she thought she may broke her leg. She was going to wait, but it took her that day. 2 bones broken in her foot. Yeah, gosh darn it. Wow. SL Parents is encouraging purpose behind the pen. She says, you'll get it done. You got this. Agreed. Christy says, God is so good in all he does in this creaky old land of the living. What a blessing God protected you from isolation. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. Let's see. SL Parents is already pumped and it's only been a few minutes. Such a great show. Oh, thanks,
Thanks.
guys. Piper says, definitely be praying for each other. Love this community. Agreed.
Yeah,
I
we
love
love you
all of you
guys too.
guys. Yep. All right, Tina,
So,
what's up with you?
well, I've been working on my outline. It's kind of a re-outline because I'm doing the revision process, but I
Mm-hmm.
went through this whole thing with my book coach, and I'm finishing up my re-outlining of all the things we changed, and it's really getting close, and I'm getting kind of excited about getting into the writing part.
Mm.
Also, if I'm a little loopy today or slow on the uptake, it's because I did not sleep last night because
Mm.
my poor husband is sick. And he went to bed at like 4 p.m. last night. And if anyone who knows my husband, he's like never stops.
Right.
And for him to stop and go to, I called my daughter and she's like, "Oh, he must be sick."
Right.
When I told her she was in bed. So I didn't even go in my room. I didn't use my CPAP. I didn't have my little noise machine. And I had a mattress that was different than the one I'm used to. And I just did not get a good night's sleep. So
Mm.
I'm a little bit, I feel like
So
I'm like floating through this.
yeah, I hope you're not getting sick too, because that's also kind of what happens at the beginning of being sick. So
I
he's
refuse.
I wish I could refuse.
I refuse to get sick.
I'm around a whole lot more kids this year than I have been, but they're all, I shouldn't say a lot, but still like the nursery at church and whatnot. But I feel like no one at church and no one else around me is as sick as what we have been. I don't know what's going on. So, oh, Chrissy says that Sadie has a what's up. For those of you that are just tuning in and don't know, Sadie is a homeschooled student that follows us and is here in our chat with us, and we love her very much. She says, we sprinted on the 5 words. We set the timer, and Sadie used 3 of the word prompts and wrote over 300 words in the 15-minute session.
Oh, I
Yay!
really want to read what she wrote.
Me too. Christy, will you go to the Facebook group and would you mind sharing
They're
what she
not on
wrote?
Facebook.
Oh, that's right.
So I don't know if you
Oh,
would be willing to email it to us, maybe.
yeah,
And
that's awesome.
what is our email? christianindiewriters@gmail.com.
Yes. Yep. Lots of support for you, Sadie. We've got Piper saying that's awesome, Sadie. Catherine says, way to go, Sadie. Yeah, that's great, Sadie. I'm very proud of you. Honestly, just get writing. Like that's the whole point of
Yep.
doing sprints. And
Okay.
hey, Jason's with us today. Hello,
Hi,
Jason.
Jason.
Good to see you.
All right. Good
All right.
chat going on. Lots of people in there. It's exciting.
Yep,
But we
love
should
it.
probably transition into our topic.
The real
Um,
reason people are here, right?
because I really, really want to know how to write a romance. So sorry. I'm a little sarcastic sometimes. It's my love language.
Well, it also
Mm.
is because if you've been with us a long time, like you have written romances on here before that we were like,
Look, when I don't try to write a romance, you guys, oh, that was a romance. And when I do, I like my main character kills the love interest. So
right. Right.
yeah.
That's awesome.
So
Chrissy
you'll
says she
be really excited to see what I wrote today. It's kind of interesting.
oh, good. Chrissy says that she will email it to us and that Sadie is so encouraged. We're so glad. We're so glad. That's
Yay.
awesome. Good for you, Sadie. Okay, so today's topic. Of course, you guys probably know that I'm super excited about it because I am obviously a romance writer. So we knew that this was gonna fall on Valentine's Day. And
Yep.
so Jamie is the one that said, let's do a love episode. I'm like, what's a love episode? Like, I don't even know. And at the moment I was just like, I'm not feeling it. But then I went searching through, I've been kind of chronicling all of our episodes and making a list because we are up to 277 episodes. Can I
Mm-hmm.
get an amen? Like 277 episodes of this little idea that I had to convince my 3 friends to do with me, right? So and we covered Christian tropes, but we had never covered romance tropes. So I thought, what a great topic for us to do the top 10 because my gosh, there's so many. I
And
did a little searching.
we've kind of poked fun at them when we did like our write a Hallmark romance
My
episode.
favorite episode.
And
Everyone likes our April Fool's episode, but my favorite one's the how to write a Hallmark Christian romance. But
yeah,
yeah.
I really like that one. But there's tropes, like there's Hallmark tropes, and then there's actual serious. I don't want to say serious. What's the right word?
Legitimate.
Legitimate tropes that are in romance that readers are looking for. That if you know what they are and how to work with them will strengthen your story.
Right.
So we're not poking fun at tropes. We're not saying they're bad. We're saying these are good tropes, and if you understand them, you can use them well.
Because there's a reason they exist.
Yeah.
Right. It's because they work. Like tropes work. And it's not just romantic tropes. There's tropes in every genre of writing.
Right.
And again, we talked about this actually a little bit in our Q&A that there are reader expectations and you can either choose to meet the reader expectations. you can try to like push the envelope, and sometimes it works and sometimes it starts to change reader expectations when one person tries it, then another person copies it, and sometimes it works, but majority of the time, if you don't meet reader expectations, you're going to lose readers or not gain
Right.
readers for if you're a new writer.
If you choose to kind of veer off and of the what the readers are expecting, you have to do it really well. If you do it really well and it hits right, then you start a new trend.
Right.
But if it's not done well, then you lose your readers.
Right.
So,
Agree.
yeah. So let's start with enemies to lovers.
Enemies to lovers. We're these are in no particular order, though they are the top 10 most popular ones according to both Google and ChatGPT. I wanted to make sure that we covered the top ones. And these are mostly the ones I would have picked too. There's a couple in here I was like, really? Wow, that's that popular. But yes, enemies to lovers. So, for example, it'd be Pride and Prejudice, like we talking about Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. Now, let me caveat, you heard me say this before, Jane Austen does not write romance. I know that. But I wanted to use examples that were like common to everybody because everybody thinks that she writes romance, but we know that she writes satire. And if we lived in her day and age, it'd be more obvious to us. But
I write Christian fantasy, but I could take an enemies to lovers trope
yes,
and put it into my third book
exactly.
that I'm
Oh,
outlining right now.
specifically, you're getting very specific. I'm getting very excited about that. That's awesome. Right, exactly. So for those of you that have not read the book, and if you, it's a great read. I also suggest watching the movie with Keira Knightley. It is so well done. I've never seen the British miniseries that everyone says is the best. Like you have two camps: people that are like, no, the Keira Knightley one, no, the British miniseries. But the Keira Knightley one is very close to the book, which I love, and just very well acted and just the scenery and the clothing and the way that they portrayed the houses, just very well done.
So the
So
one with Keira Knightley, is that the one with the guy who's in Spooks on? Is that
probably.
this? Yeah.
I don't know
Okay.
that.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
one I like.
Yeah. Matthew. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
He's
so
British.
why does enemies to lovers work? Well, specifically in that book, it works because they start off at odds, due to like misunderstandings, pride, there's prejudice, obviously, but gradually falling in love. And the reason why it works is because we can see that. Like we love like the juiciness of like, oh, they hate each other. They hate each other so much. And that's very like it takes a lot of energy and emotion to hate someone, right? A lot of
Yeah.
passion to hate someone, and to see that flip, right? Do
Right.
a 180. Like that's what's juicy about that. Is like they go from hating each other to all of a sudden like, oh, they love each other. Because why do they hate each other? Probably because there's things in each other's personality that trick that they share, right? Like my
Mm-hmm.
mom and I, oh, she was my best friend. We were so close, but we also push each other's buttons because we were so close and we were so much
Yeah.
alike, right? So it's
Right.
the same thing with enemies to
And
lovers.
I've heard psychologists say that love and hate are related. They're kind of
Mhm.
opposite sides of the same coin.
Yes,
So, like that passion that you're feeling in the hate can turn easily to love, and with the same passion.
exactly. Like, here's a great example, and I hope that he doesn't listen to this podcast, but my neighbor next door, Gaetano, nice guy. I don't hate him. I'm very neutral about him. He's a nice guy. He's fine neighbor. We don't ever like we just say hi. Like we don't really have any sort of hardly any interaction. Like there's no like emotion there. Like either way, right? And
Hmm.
so that's a boring story. Nobody wants to hear me talk about my neighbor Gaetano that we almost never talk and there's nothing there. But like
Except
if
he's got the best name. Other
he
than
does have
that.
a great name. He is a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. So if he's listening to this,
Mhm.
he's a super nice guy. Like I'm just saying that like we are. If
There's
he
no
were to go to
passion
work,
there, though.
yeah, he would never go to work and talk about me. There's nothing
Right.
there. Like we're just like, hey, have a
Yeah.
good day. Hey, talking. You pet your dog. Okay, see you later. Like
He might
there's
go to
just
work and talk about your chickens.
right.
Mm.
But if I was single and I had a neighbor who like was a jerk and pushed my buttons and we got in a shouting matches, now you would listen to that story. Whether or
Yeah,
not it turned to romance or not, you would listen to that story. So that's why
exactly.
the enemy to lovers, why that one works. So all right. So
Okay,
then
so the next one that we want to talk about is friends to lovers.
yes.
To me,
all right,
that's not as exciting, but that's just my personal opinion. Maybe you could
right.
change my mind.
Well, okay. So if you've ever read the book Emma, again by Jane Austen, and again, I was trying to pick classic literature or movies that would like most of us that are watching this would know. So Emma um is friends with Mr. Knightley. They have a very deep friendship, and then it slowly blossoms into love, which it because the reason why this works is because especially when we're young girls. This trope works really, really well if you write books that are YA or books for like younger people, because we all had a crush on somebody we were friends with. Whether you want to admit it or not, there was somebody, whether it was an older guy, we're gonna talk about brother's best friend, I think later, but we all had that crush, and it feels satisfying to like read something about people that just have so much in common and are friends, and they don't see it until all of a sudden it blossoms into something.
All right.
So maybe it doesn't have the same excitement of like the enemies to lovers, but it has this very satisfying resolution to a friendship, because in general, men and women aren't friends. Like in
Mhm.
general, like I do have some guy friends that are married to my girlfriends. But like we don't have that same kind of like friendship that I do with my girlfriends. I have had friends in the past that were guys and we were really close, but those relationships haven't lasted for me because I just don't think it's the natural order of things. You can come at me. I know there's going to be people who come at me. That's fine. And that's my experience. But there's just something satisfying about the way that it naturally occurs in a book when you have two people that are friends and that portion of the relationship is already developed, then the love just kind of comes into it. Because when you fall in love, the friendship part has to happen too. Otherwise, it's not going to last.
Mhm.
Right. So,
So I have a question.
okay.
Frozen,
Oh, Disney Frozen. Yes.
Kristoff,
Yes.
and Anna. Is that
Yes.
friends to lovers?
I would say maybe,
I mean,
though
they
I
were
think,
lifelong friends, but they
right.
like partner up to save her sister, and she's got this fiance.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it can, that's the other thing too, is the romances, the tropes, you can use multiple tropes. I would think, yes, it possibly could be that one. I think that forced proximity, which we're going to talk about here in a second, also plays into that. Um, but yeah, I can say, yeah, I would say that that would probably be friends to lovers. Yeah. I
Okay.
was also opposites attract. They're kind of opposite. And
Hmm.
they kind of fought a little bit at the beginning too. I mean, there's
Yeah,
a
I
lot
like
going
they're
on
like
there.
you got engaged to a guy you just met. Like,
Right. And
I
here
love
he
that.
falls in love with her in like 24 hours too, right?
Right.
They didn't get engaged, but still.
Well, it
Yeah.
was kind of a slow burn too, because they don't even get engaged till like he's trying to ask her through the second
Right.
movie. Oh, sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen
Spoilers.
it.
Yeah, but you learn that really early in the movie, so it's not really a spoiler.
Right.
So, right.
Okay. So what about fake
I
relationships?
love this one. I've not used this one yet, but I need to use this one because it's one of my favorites. My absolute favorite Shakespeare play of all time is Much Ado About Nothing. And again, if you don't want to read it, there is a wonderful adaptation movie with Emma Thompson in it. I
Love
love
her.
Emma Thompson.
Hmm.
It's from the 90s, so it's a little bit older, but a fake relationship, it's it's so great because you have to pretend that you're in the relationship for some reason, right? Like, my parents are bugging me because I'm not married yet and it's Christmas time. I need a boyfriend. Will you pretend to be my boyfriend to go home with me so my parents won't bug me the whole,
Hmm.
vacation?
I think I saw a movie like that with Sandra Bullock in it, but not. I can't think of what it was called.
The proposal.
Oh, and they went to Alaska.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 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 So there's that one, and there's so many Christmas ones, like Hallmark Christmas
Hmm.
ones that use this. But it works specifically with the Shakespeare one. It works because like Beatrice and Benedict hate each other. Again, enemies to lovers, along with fake relationship. They are tricked into believing they love each other because two minor characters pretend to be like, no, they pretend to be in love with each other because there's two minor characters that want to be together, but for some reason they can't because Benedict and Beatrice are always fighting. And
Hmm.
so it's pulling the other two apart. So they pretend to be in a relationship so these two can like get married, but all the pretending all of a sudden, plus they get like convinced that like the other person likes them because the other people are scheming. That's the whole thing about the Shakespeare like romance plays, is there's always scheming, and it's fun
Yes.
scheming. But
Right.
it's such a fun play. If
I
you could
was
ever get to see it live with real people, you need to do it.
I was really shocked when I brought Christopher home to homeschool him, and he did not
Mhm.
like to read. And then he started liking reading because of the kind of books we were reading. And when he
Mhm.
got into high school and started reading Shakespeare was his absolute
Yeah.
favorite.
And see, that's crazy because it's not meant to be read, it's meant to be acted out and viewed, which, so some people hate it because it doesn't their minds don't work that way. When they read
Hmm.
it, they can't actually see everything happening, and so that's really interesting.
But when Chris writes, he writes that way.
Mhm.
Like I had to
Oh,
tell him, like your writing is great, but you need something between the dialogue. Like
oh,
so
maybe
he
he
like his mind worked that way.
yeah,
And he thought it was hilarious. He loved Shakespeare's sense of humor,
he's so
and he
funny.
was always laughing, just sitting there
Yeah.
laughing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm.
We live pretty close to London, Ontario, which has a Shakespeare company and a whole location that if you live in Michigan, it's worth the 2-hour trip to go see some Shakespeare there. So Jason agrees. He says the play is amazing. Purpose Behind the Pen says Friends to Lovers is her favorite trope and she uses it the most. Fake dating is another one, which was fake relationship. One that she loves, Holiday in Handcuffs with Melissa Joan Hart. Oh my gosh, that one's hilarious. If you haven't seen that one, you need to look that one up. That is a fake dating one, but she like basically handcuffs him. He has to go with her. It's so great.
That sounds
J-
funny.
Jason also says, I have a romance element in my book and I've been kind of unsure how to go about it. I was excited to hearing the topic for this episode as a result. Awesome. Great.
Awesome. Okay, so the next one's forced proximity.
Yes.
There might be
So,
some of that in my book too.
oh,
Mhm.
so you mentioned Frozen. I do believe that Kristoff and Anna, because of them on a quest together, causes some forced proximity. So that's going to cause the romance. If you've ever read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, um,
Mhm.
Jane and Mr. Rochester, they live in the same house. She's the governess and he's the master, and just being in the same house, it forces them to interact. And so I'm not a huge fan of that book. I'm
That
not a
was the
huge.
first one by her that I read.
And how did you feel about it?
I was like 10 and I loved it.
So I thought it was okay, but I was in college, so maybe
Right.
as a 10-year-old I would have
I
been a little
tried
bit
to
more.
reread it and I didn't really get through it the set when I tried to reread it when I
Gotcha,
was older.
gotcha.
But
So
my
again,
10-year-old self was into it.
so if you write non-romance and you like, so forced proximity would be something like when they're going on an adventure together, or if they have to work together, or they have to, like, if you're watching a crime or writing a crime drama and they're on a stakeout together, like anything that would make them be forced to spend time together and have to like share about it themselves and to like just be personal. That's what
Mhm.
this is about. So
So I
again, it
have
can be used with other ones.
grandchildren, so like all of the movies that are coming to my mind are Disney movies. So like Beauty and the
Totally fine.
Beast,
Yep.
Enemies to Lovers, Forced Proximity.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's also one we're going to mention a little bit later too. I use Beauty and the Beast as an example a little bit later but yes, agreed to all of that. So
Okay, the next one is Slow Burn.
which can go hand in hand with friends to lovers. But a slow burn is something that the romance happens slowly over either the book or a series of books. So if you're writing a non-romance books, you could do a slow burn where it takes the entire series for the characters to get together, and that can be very satisfying in a non-romance book because it gives you some hope, especially in books that maybe like are dark or have like um not great things happening, to have this hope that these characters are going to get together. We were just talking with Jamie last week. I think it was off camera, maybe it was on the episode, about a book she was reading, and she had 8 minutes left in the audiobook, and she was like, there's no way they're going to get together, and I'm going to be so mad if they don't get together. And then she texted us later and said, yay, it was a great book, so they must have gotten together. So again, the slow burn of it. So the example that I was thinking of was Anne of Green Gables.
Mhm.
I read that when I was young. I love that series, and the reason I love it isn't anything else except for because of Gilbert. So Anne and Gilbert were friends, so again, friends to lovers, but it develops over years. Like they are kids when they first meet and are friends, and then she goes through so many different things throughout the books, and it isn't until the very end of the books that the childhood relationship turns into this like deep, satisfying, all natural relationship that has built into. And you're like, yes, because everyone who read it was like, they have to end up together. If I finish this series and they don't end up together, I'm gonna be so mad. And they did end up
Mhm.
together. So
There's a slow burn definitely in my series.
awesome.
There's going to be there's new characters I'm introducing in book 3, but the
Mhm.
my main character has definitely a slow burn going on
Awesome.
in her life.
Good deal.
Okay, and the next one is second chance romance.
Yes. So this is another popular one, especially if you're writing older characters, right? So this is very popular with romance that not for young adults probably because you don't have haven't lived long enough to have a second chance, right? But you dated in high school, broke up, and then you somehow find each other later in life, or um, marriages you end at the end in divorce, and later they end up back together. I was thinking of Persuasion by Jane Austen. Um, so this one, Anne Elliot and Captain Wentworth, which when I watched the movie, I even though I love the actors that portrayed these two characters, I just didn't feel the connection that I feel like there should have been, like from reading the books. But Anne Elliot, like they were like at first they were engaged, and then something broke them apart because he wasn't like worthy enough in her family's eyes or whatnot. But there's another story there that he doesn't know the whole story of. And anyways, they find their way back to each other. And again, there's like other people involved. And so they like, again, there's some proximity that they have to spend time together and there at the end. But ultimately they were in love, then they were apart, and then they come back together again. And so,
I'm watching a crime thing where this lady's in the CIA,
mm,
and like this it's years later she ends up meeting back up with this guy she was in love with when she first joined, and she was like a spy in Russia, and they're like
hmm
on this train, and the relationship ended because of the train, and then
hmm
they meet back up again because of a case on the train. So like you can take these tropes and you could stick them into whatever you're writing.
right.
I think that was it was really well done and emotional, and I was like, this is like a spy thriller thing, but I'm like choking up over here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Another example in movies, it's a more recent one and a little controversial right now, but the Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively movie, It Ends With Us, which I cannot recommend the book. I've not read it, but I've heard. So I don't recommend the book if you're a Christian. But the movie was clean enough. There was a scene that was kind of like, but there's no nudity. Like it wasn't like as bad as I was expecting it to be. But again, there is a second chance romance in there. So that's another one.
Okay.
So
So the next one we have how many more we got? We got 3 more, and we maybe the
all right, we'll go
next
through them
few.
faster. Sorry.
Love triangle.
Obviously, like there's usually it's one woman and two guys, and she's got to decide between the two. People talk about the what are those vampire movies? Why can't I think? Twilight.
Oh, yeah, are you team somebody or other? I never watched them,
Exactly.
so I
Um,
don't know
I I thought of Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So it's tragic love triangle in my opinion between Catherine and Heathcliff and Edgar. But there's that one's used so often, so people should know that. Like soap
Mhm.
operas, growing up with my babysitter watching soap operas all the time, it was always a love triangle.
And
So
isn't it like normal? Like, is this a trope where there's like a really good guy who's just really nice, and then there's like the bad guy who's kind
yeah.
of more edgier, and then she has to pick between them?
Yes. I think the better written ones are where you like both of them and you're not really
Right.
sure. Like you
I don't
feel
mean
her
like
confusion.
he's evil or bad, but that he's more like, he rides a motorcycle and wears leather, like, and the
Right.
other guy's like the boy next door.
I c yeah, I kind of did that with my with, A Calling for Phoebe. But I think I just wrote the other guy where nobody liked him. There was nothing kind of like he was just kind of like seemed sleazy anyway, and everyone, Will Caffey was like the boy next door. Everybody loved him,
Mhm.
right? So I
And
probably
I've
could have done
always
better.
been attracted to, like, the bad boys image, like, with the motorcycle and the leather and the but I married, like, such a good guy. Like,
Mm,
he's just nice. So I don't know what happened there.
yeah.
Okay, Grumpy Sunshine.
So again, this is one we talked about earlier, Beauty and the Beast. Like she's just like they even dress her in yellow. Like she is just sunshine, and he is like hair like dark and just grrr, and like again, I would say that you could also say that Wuthering Heights is also a Grumpy Sunshine one too because
Mhm,
Heathcliff is so dark and
mhm.
so that
And what about
again,
Jane Eyre? Because that guy is,
mm,
like,
yeah,
brooding, and he's, like doesn't he have his wife, like, in the attic or something?
yeah,
If I remember correctly.
it's
And
very
she's,
that
like,
time
crazy, so
period.
he has her locked up.
Yeah, that time period very much was like there was a lot of brooding and dark,
Yeah.
male characters, so, yep.
Okay. Secret Forbidden Romance.
The most famous one, which isn't even a romance, again, is Romeo and Juliet. Again, I argue this all the time, it's not a romance, but
It's a
it's romantic.
tragedy.
It's a tragedy,
Okay,
but
that
it
was my
does have
question. When I said I had a question about Romeo and
Uh-huh,
Juliet before the
yeah.
show, that was my question. I'm like, I always thought it was a tragedy, not a romance.
It is a tragedy, but there is a romantic element in it, and
Right,
they had to keep their romance a secret because they were, like, feuding families, and it makes it that much more, like, heartbreaking that they can't be together, and, everybody watches it and is like, "But why? Why can't they just run off together?" Well, then you wouldn't remember the story, right? You
right.
remember the story because of how it tragically ends, so,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. And the last one is Opposites Attract.
Right, and I thought of Pretty Woman because he could not be more stiff and more, like, conform to his suit and she's just kind of like well, obviously she's a prostitute, but she's also, like, kind of, like, just fun and, like, does and pulls him out of his, like, stiffness and his grumpiness
Mhm.
and,
Right.
so
And he's like this really successful businessman, and she's a prostitute. So that's an opposite. But then
yes,
personality wise, they're opposites too. And like
right,
socioeconomically, they're opposites. And even
right.
culturally, they're opposites.
I use this trope with my book that is yet to come out. Redeeming Sarah or Forgiving Sarah is coming out hopefully soon, but I use that one for between those two. So they become these tropes are timeless. You can see that they have been as long as there's been books written. I feel like these tropes have been happening and there's so I'm curious to see what everyone else we've gotten some chat in here about what people think about this. I would love to carry on this conversation over to our Facebook group. Let us know which ones are your favorite, which ones you hate, because that is somebody made a comment that that reverse harem is basically a love triangle, and that Christian readers, because most of them seem to hate love triangles. I agree. I think it's how it's written and how it's handled. But I'd love to have this conversation continue, but we do need to move
Yeah.
on.
And
So,
if you're listening, go check out our the chat feed on YouTube because it's really rich and full of good
mhm.
stuff. Okay, so
Yes.
now we're going to go to our favorite time, which is the feeding of the backs, where we get a timer set for 15 minutes. We get the same prompt and we write for 15 minutes. No planning, no editing, no revising, just writing for 15 minutes, and then we read it raw and unedited to you guys live on the air, so the whole world can hear it. It's not as scary as it sounds. And so we only give positive feedback because of that. And so why don't you tell everyone what our words were and what you wrote?
Okay, our words were custody, ride, sequence, mature, and battle. And I used all 5. That
Oh,
hasn't
good for
happened in
you.
a long time. So, okay, here we go. Excuse me, sorry. The mature thing would be to write out to the McGuire estate and apologize to the widow. But Kay didn't really feel like being the bigger person right now. It wasn't his fault that the woman was left with custody of a ranch that she couldn't manage, let alone bills that she had no way of paying. If she wanted to wallow in that mud of a situation, that was on her. Excuse me, sorry. He'd offered to help her out, but that crazy woman would rather battle him over his intentions and his proximity to her house than listen to reason. For goodness sake, He was only trying to be neighborly. What lunatic pulls a rifle out to greet a person? Cade uncinched the saddle and pulled it off of Colonel's back. As he put away the tack, he was unaware that he wasn't alone. He was also unaware that his internal thoughts had turned to muttering. What crazy woman. Cade turned to find Shane Jackson leaning against a stall watching him. His lip hitched at the corner, letting Cade know that his foreman found something amusing about Cade's situation. Cade turned back to his horse. The McGuire widow. She's a raging lunatic. Really? Shane asked. I mean, I don't know much about her. She's kept mostly to herself all these years, but I never heard no talk about her being crazy. As he brushed on his horse, Cade recounted the sequence of events from the last hour, including the widow shooting at him. When he finished, Shane just nodded, the hitch in his lip growing. Don't sound crazy to me at all, Shane said finally. Cade stopped brushing. Shooting at an innocent man don't seem crazy to you? Shane shrugged. Well, you ain't exactly the littlest. 3, 2, 1.
Oh no,
That's it.
he's not the littlest. What?
Man, I think is all I was going to say.
Oh, that was awesome. I love the like Cade's reaction and the foreman's reaction to her, where he doesn't
Mhm,
see it crazy and Cade does. And
mhm.
so I'm like, oh, what's going on in Cade that he think like he's all up in our. I feel like if he hadn't been attracted to her, he would have not thought she was crazy.
And you might have handled things
Like
differently
it was
too,
like a
right?
defensive reaction.
Mhm.
Here I am trying to pick him apart psychologically, but that means that it was good writing because I'm I'm looking at the story and not the writing, and that is what you want when you write good writing. Like people don't notice the writing; they just notice the story,
Right.
and
Well, I
that's a good
appreciate.
story. And I'm excited to read it. And I'm not a romance fan usually,
Mhm.
um, but I really like yours because
Aw,
there's like a another purpose behind it, and I like that a lot.
I
So
really appreciate that. Thank you.
no
Um,
problem.
I finished it and thought, well, that's words, but I think you guys have seen enough of these characters to kind of get a little bit more. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Christy says that's good, Jen. That was good, Jen. Thank you. I appreciate that. Purpose behind the pen says that is good, Miss Jen. Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. You guys are great. I really appreciate that. All right, Tina, share with us what
Okay.
you wrote.
So I started to try to fit ride in here because that was what caught my eye, and I don't think I got anything else in there, just ride. And then I ran out of time because I just started going, and I
Mhm.
don't even know what this is, but here we go. The train's wheels clacking, along with the motion of the car, lulled Mary and caused her eyelids to droop. She shook her head, forcing her eyes open and sitting up just a little higher. This ride was taking forever, and the car was full of men in coarse spun work clothes and boots caked in mud. She could feel their eyes on her, some simply curious, but others were sinister, with a dark light behind them. She didn't need to look into them to see that light. As a lady in a rough land, she'd seen it plenty of times. Not
Mhm.
that she should blame it on the rough men in rough conditions in the wilderness. She'd seen it just as much back home in the handsomely decorated parlors and even in what should have been the safety of her family home when her cousins came to visit.
Mm.
She breathed a prayer for the Lord to help her stay awake and alert until she made it to her destination, a little town called Bourbonnais, an hour south of Chicago, where she'd been hired to be a nanny for a professor at a budding college. His wife had died of a sudden illness, leaving him alone with two small children, a boy and a girl. She hoped the professor didn't have that same dark light behind his eyes. He was a theology professor at a Christian institution, but Mary had been around enough to know that just because somebody professed faith in Christ didn't mean they were a true follower. But he'd been recommended by a dear woman she knew from church who'd sworn he was upright and lived an authentic life with the Lord. But still, the worry twisted in her gut. The train's whistle blew and the train slowed at a stop, which seemed to be nothing but empty fields. And most of the men stood to exit the train. Wagons waited to take them to whatever work they were headed for. Mary let out a slow breath, relieved to find herself alone in the train car for the rest of the journey. Then the door opened, and a man jumped into the train, looking around at all the empty seats, and spotting Mary, made his way toward her with a grin. 3, 2, 1.
Ah, Tina, that was so good. Like, now I want you to finish the story. Like, all right. So the line that got me was what should have been safety, something, and then when her cousins arrived. Like, you told so much in that one sentence. I was just like, oh, this poor woman. Bourbon A, I see you. Um, I love that she's going to work for this professor, and it's gonna be kind of like, in my mind, it's kind of like a uh the Sound of Music kind of situation, and he's gonna be gruff and he's gonna have these kids and she's gonna fall in love with the kids first, and like,
Mhm.
I just love it. So good. But then this guy, who is this guy? And what's
Yep,
going on? And why is he approaching her? And how is this gonna,
right.
like, oh
I
my
don't have no
gosh.
idea. I was just had to keep writing
Dana.
because the timer hadn't gone off.
I absolutely
And
agree with Christy. She said, ah. That's how
and,
I feel
like,
right there.
I was like, "Where is she going?" And I had to come up with somewhere, like, off right off the top of like, I had a
Yeah.
15 minutes to write. And
Mhm.
so, my daughter went to college to Christian University in Bourbonnais, and she was a
Yep.
nanny, part-time. She used to go in the mornings before her classes to get these 2 kids off to school for this guy. He was a police officer, he wasn't a professor.
Uh-huh.
But his wife had died, and he had these 2
Mm.
little kids, and he needed someone to come get them out of bed, get them dressed, feed them breakfast, and get them off to the school bus. And so
Mhm.
she worked for this guy as a nanny while she was in college out there.
Yeah.
And so, like, that all just like came out
Mhm.
in the
That's
writing.
awesome.
So it's another
Yeah, that's
example of how real life can often come out in what you write.
in creative ways. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that, Tina. That's really great. And the sad thing is you probably won't ever continue that because it's not your, your normal
Who
thing, but
knows?
who
Never
knows,
know.
right? Yeah, yeah. Put it in the pile, right?
I
You got a
do like
pile
to
of things.
read Christian fiction, just not necessarily romance. I like the epic ones
Mhm.
that like you follow the same family through generations. Like I've
Right.
read fictional, historical fiction like that, and I've
Mhm.
loved it. So
Yeah.
okay, well, now it's time to transition again into the what's next, where
Hmm.
we talk about what's next for us. So, what about you, Jen? What
Oh
do you
gosh.
feel like is next for you?
A nap.
Yeah,
I
you need
just
to rest.
I just need some rest, and I'm gonna get at this today. Yesterday I got to, like, I literally did not get out of pajamas yesterday. I sat in our recliner pretty much all day long. My one of my daughters is sick too. The other one seems to be doing okay. Um, but we did nothing, and I needed to do dishes. Like, I just needed to. And my poor husband, who's working long hours and he has to drive a long way to his job that he's doing right now. He's in construction, and he is a journeyman sheet metal. So he does like big projects, like architectural sheet metal and things like that. And his job he's at right now is a long ways away. And he drives, and he came home and he started doing dishes. And I'm like, please stop. I will do them when I feel better. Like, but between the two of us, we got the family fed last night. And today it's just gonna be resting and trying to get some dishes done. And then yeah, I have a whole list of things of book wise that I need to, like, a bunch of little things, a checklist I'm going through, but right now I can't even think about it. I just need to rest. So I'm
Well,
sorry that I don't have any writing things to say.
say prayers for you to feel better.
I appreciate that. Person behind the pen says her what's next is book 18 now, has only one chapter left and she's ready to finish the book, but hubby and she have a date at the bowling alley.
Oh, how fun.
I love that. What are you doing tonight, Tina? Do you guys do anything romantic? Well, your husband's sick. I'm sick.
Well, he's not throwing up anymore, but his gut's still achy. So
Yeah.
he didn't go to work. He's just kind of laying on the couch.
Yeah.
But my daughter and her husband are going out. And I'm picking up my one granddaughter Athena after
Mhm.
school, and they're bringing Eliana, who's the 2-year-old, over here for me to watch her while they go out.
That's the best
So we're
Valentine's.
gonna I don't know what we're gonna do yet, but
I hope I get to be that grandma. My mom and dad were every New Year's Eve. And Valentine's Day, they always took my littles so that we could do stuff. And they made it like a deal. I remember when I was a kid, my favorite Valentine's memory, still to this day, sorry, honey, to my husband, but my favorite Valentine's memory to this day is my grandparents. Um, it was winter like this. And my grandpa went and shoveled out the fire pit, and we had a campfire and roasted hot dogs and marshmallows for dinner. And my grandma had made us heart-shaped cakes. And what I didn't, and I told her as a teenager, I said, that was my favorite memory. Remember when we were little and you did that? And she started crying. She's like, we were broke. We had no money. And all I had in the house were some hot dogs. And she's like, I had some flour and I had some sugar and I could make you cake. And that's all. She's like, I had to do it from scratch because I couldn't even afford to buy cake mix. And I felt so bad because guys were with us for Valentine's Day. I couldn't do anything special. And I'm like, Grandma, that was the most special thing ever. It was my favorite memory. So
That's funny because when my kids were little and I was completely broke, I was a single
mhm.
mom and I had no money, zero. But my uncle worked at a paper mill and he used to send me these cases of construction paper,
Uh-huh.
pads that had been rejected by quality control.
Okay.
And at the
Awesome.
back of each pad was a piece of cardboard.
Mhm.
So I pulled the cardboard off 3 of them and I hand drew masks and I colored them and I cut them out and I put like shoestrings on them. And
Uh-huh.
and so all my kids had were these cardboard masks that we were tied on their head with shoestrings. That's all they had to go trick or
Uh-huh.
treating in. And to this day, they say that was the best Halloween they've ever had.
Aw.
I was
That's
like,
so
really?
aw. That's awesome.
So
All right, real quick check of the chat before we leave. Purpose Behind the Pen says sending prayers to everyone who's under the weather. Appreciate your prayers. Piper says that she's going to be brainstorming. Her pro tag is starting a craft business, so I may be doing some projects with the gremlins for research. I love that. She says that she's got the gremlins for the weekend for her daughter. That's super nice. And Christy says, we are so thankful for you guys. We look forward to every Friday. Well, we are so
uh,
thankful for you and Sadie too, Christy. And everybody who tunes in. We really appreciate you
yeah, we
guys.
really look forward to seeing you guys.
We do.
Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
I think that's it for this episode of the Christianity Writers Podcast. So until next week, may your pen be prolific, your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.
Bye now.